Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. I have what would you call it? A library emergency. I have to return a book to the library before I get into a whole bunch of trouble. I've had it out for way too long. And so I don't like doing my book reviews without the book in my hands if it's possible. So I'm quickly doing the two books that I read over New Year's, sort of around the 26th to last night, I guess. And I wanted to start the New Year's off with good books that I was for sure going to enjoy. And I'd had quite a run up from the previous video. You might have heard me say what I sort of kind of end of December I'd had with books that I had been really looking forward to. So, I decided not to rely on just whatever bubbles up, but I actually planned to have a good exit to the year. And I started that with Janet Evanovitch's Dirty 30. And I'm sorry, I haven't done anything around lighting. I'm just rushing into this video. So this is the last book that Janet Evanovitch has written. I don't know if there are more coming because it's got an amazing cliffhanger ending. And if I was Janet Evanovitch, and the fact that it's book number 30 and she's ending on the perfect cliffhanger, I would stop it here and just, turn my attention to something else. However, I'm not Janet Evanovitch and she doesn't call me regularly. So it's a continuation, or it's a continuation of the previous 29 adventures that Stephanie Plum has, and it still contains the regular cast of characters. There's Connie in the office, and Lulu, her sidekick, who is a woman of generous proportions who really celebrates it, and her two love interests, Morelli the cop and Ranger the bad guy. and then there's, of course, Grandma Moser, who's a little less prominent in this book. Bob the dog makes a number of spectacular entrances and exits, some involving cats. And I can say that no cars blew up in this one. So Stephanie Plum is a bonds agent, and she generally has to get her she has to get her men who have, not men, but also women, who have not shown up for their court dates. And so she's a bounty hunter, effectively. And sometimes she's pretty chaotic around it. Sometimes it depends whether someone has insulted Lulu by saying she's fat, in which case things really go topsy-turvy. And in this book, Morelli is a very backward, like way in the back distance character, and she spends most of her time with Ranger solving a couple of crises. And it's a great hoot. I really enjoyed it, and I felt that she was sort of coming to a point in her history of the book, the character Stephanie Plum, where maybe she was finally going to stop being so indecisive and make a choice between one of the two men in her life, and also she's always second-guessing her career choice, which wasn't so much a career choice as just she was desperate for money and ended up working at this crazy-ass job. It was good fun, a good energy, and just a really fun way to bring in the new year. And the other book that I read, now someone recommended this, and one of the things that I don't do, which I realized I should, is that if someone on YouTube recommends a book, I sometimes will go to the library and immediately ask for it. And what I don't do in my notes, in my book log, is I don't put that in the recommendations. I've got a page that's just recommendations from other booktubers. And I don't put that in. I just go straight to the library and order it. So I don't actually know who recommended this. And this is book number, I think it's number 5 in the series. It's written by Connie Willis, To Say Nothing of the Dog. Let's see if we can, there, I think that's a bit better. Yeah. This is a time travel mystery. And luckily, nobody's dead. That's kind of a nice, it's refreshing. It's an adventure time travel series. It takes place in Oxford. And we've got people in the year 2057 who do travel back in time and try and... they're not really trying to correct world history because there isn't that kind of vision of we need to fix things so the world is a better place. They have to leave history alone. And one of the things they also cannot do is they cannot bring objects or people from the past to the future. So I'm not entirely sure what the mission is of these time travelers, because in this case we've got a very wealthy woman who's just moved heaven and earth to rebuild Coventry Cathedral as it was before it was bombed in the 1940s. And so she's after all these detailed descriptions of artifacts, and they're being reproduced in 2057 for the opening of this cathedral. And so our time traveler here, who is Ned Henry, has gone back looking for something that's called the bishop's stump, which is also a long story. It's basically just a really, really ugly metal vase that everybody's got their knickers in a knot about, and she wants to have it, what's the word? Replicated. Thank you. And so details are important, and where was it in the cathedral at the time of the bombing, or had it been, some things were taken out of the cathedral in anticipation of being bombed, so things were certain artifacts were being protected. I think in 1940 nobody loved this vase. It was pretty bloody ugly, and so I think they left it there in the hope that should the cathedral be bombed, this might go up in flames too, but it doesn't. So we go back and forth in time, and we meet another time traveler, Verity, and she is on a different century. She's in 1888, and how the two meet is that Ned has been going back and forth in the time so often that he's got jet lag, time lag, and so he needs a rest, but he's trying to hide from this rich lady who just doesn't understand being told the word no. So they send him back to 1888 because they figure he can do no harm there. So they've sent him off to where this other time traveler has gone to patch up a completely different kind of situation. And in the end, they both are stumbling through this 1888 rift in the time, I guess. And it's a comedy of errors. If you've read P.G. Wodehouse or J.K. Jerome, 3 Men in a Boat, and there was another author that came to mind that is this kind of witty repartee, banter. There was someone else went through my mind. But anyhow, so there's this back and forth, of conversation, and there's these turns of phrases, and there's these, what actually happens is the character Ned at a certain point actually bumps into J.K. Jerome, 3 Men on a Boat, going down the Thames River, and they end up crashing into each other. Ned's in his own boat, and it's just so funny because, if you've read 3 Men in a Boat, you know that it's also a farcical book, and so we get to see the characters from that novel interact with the characters of this novel. There's nothing particularly earth-shattering about this book. There's nothing particularly compelling in a way about the situation they're trying to solve, but it's just so well written, so amusing, and again it was a fairly high energy, and again it was just a very positive reading experience. I would say that in the world of amazing books, it doesn't get a 5, but in the world of am I entertained and did I thoroughly enjoy it, on that spectrum, for sure it gets a 5 out of 5. The library only has this book and number 9 in the series, so I am going to try and search for number 1. I have heard through that booktuber who I don't remember that it is a good series, and so So I think it's worth pursuing now. And a good entry into the new year. I read this, I finished it last night at about midnight. And I kind of didn't work hard to get to the end of it. Because I know I have this library thread hanging over my head, but I chomped on it pretty steadily. So that's it for the beginning. I don't know what I'm going to bring to you. This is not the whole video, so I don't know where I'm going, but I just wanted to do this before I lost the books. I'll see you in a few nanoseconds. Well, it's a couple nanoseconds later for you guys, but it's about a couple hours later for me. I think what I want to talk to you today about is a crazy dip dive I did into back book journals, and I put them away on the shelf, but I have about 6 that have tracked my reading journeys over the years. And what I used to do is, if I found a passage that I really enjoyed out of a book, I would copy it over, and this is one of them. Started many years ago. I would just copy something that was a particularly good paragraph or description or something like that, and reference the book. And then I just got a little more cryptic. And then I make these lists, these recommended lists, and from other booktubers, or maybe I've come across something that in a book review, or like in a magazine or in a newspaper or something. And then over the years, I slowly chug away at it until I can give myself a great big check mark. I live for those check marks, and that means that everything on that list has been investigated one way or another, read it or discarded it, or maybe even purchased it. So those 2 yellow stickies are 2 pages of recommendations that I have not yet moved over to summaries. So I thought, I know what would be a really good idea. I was looking forward to this all year. There was, for Christmas, I thought, I'm going to go through my old books and just scour through and remember what authors were really good, or if I forgot to write down the author's name, the book name, and also just were there series that I had not completed. And so I thought, well, that'll be fun. That'll be interesting to do between Christmas and New Year's, and I did it. And it's after 3 o'clock. My mother's gone for her nap at her assisted living place in Toronto. I've got my little owl mug. Isn't that so cute? And there's scotch in there because Mom's having a really hard time. And so she's having a nap and I'm having a scotch. So what I did was multiple things. I was going through the 23 to 27, is that right? Yeah, 2003 to 2007. And I just scanned through those years, and I came up with a fairly small page of authors and series that I wanted to go back to. And the one that I'm most excited about is C.J. Sansom. He has, what was his name? Sheldrake, I think, was the detective, and it takes place around the time of Henry VIII's dissolution of the abbeys and churches and so on. And he's not really a detective, but he finds himself in a number of situations where he's got to figure out what's going on, what are the plots. He's more of an unraveler than he is a detective. And there are 7 books in the series, and I know I've read the first 2, and that's a series I would really like to go back to. Now, in the same time, while I'm going through all of these different years of books that I'm looking for through memory lane kind of situation, my one book club has set us the task, and I think I've mentioned this. We have to come up with a bunch of suggestions for the next coming up year, and we have to find 3 mysteries to recommend, 3 romance, 3 literatures, and 3 sci-fi fantasies. And I think I also said I don't really love doing this for a book club. I'd like to have read a book so that I can, say with some confidence that yes, at least somebody will enjoy it if it's only me. So The other thing you have to do with this recommendation list is go into the library and make sure that that it's available. And so some of these things are available as audio or ebooks and regular books. So I didn't look to see what the waiting lists were like, because presumably everybody, I don't know how they're going to do this. If every person in the book club, which is 6 of us currently, if that's like 18 books per genre. So I don't know how we're going to do this, and it's not my job to worry about it. I've done my task, but I could not really come up with romance. I had no what should I say? No conviction about any of the romances that I came up with. They're just ones that I thought, well, it doesn't sound terrible. I did, yeah. And I thought, I'm not going to recommend an old-time romance, you know. I know, for instance, if I was to make the mistake of recommending a Jane Austen book, they'd probably, you know, bury me alive with hardcover books. So I don't really know what kind of romance they want. Anyways, I have done the task, and that's list number 2. There's one book out there that's catching the attention of a lot of people, and that is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak. And this one is following a raindrop through the lives of 3 different people, and the backstory, Epic of Gilgamesh, is part of the tie-through. And in this house, things like the Aeneid and Odyssey and Beowulf are quite often discussed and read, and new interpretations or translations are quite often read. And so that's not me so much, but I do like the story of Gilgamesh, and so that's been my myth, if you like, that I like to see retellings of. So the Epic of Gilgamesh runs through this book, so this is why I'm going to read it. The other one that I recommend, I heard it recommended last year, or it was going to be a new release, and I remember thinking, oh, I really want to grab that one. And it's James by Percival Everett, and it is a retelling of the Huckleberry Finn story from the point of view of Jim, the escaping enslaved man who was traveling with Huckleberry Finn. And I love Huckleberry Finn. It's like it's right there beside Anne of Green Gables. And at the time, I just thought, oh, that's really cool. That's right up my alley. Turns out, just based on what I'm hearing across the YouTube, and also in a couple of magazine best ofs, this is going to be a real contender for all those awards. I would be very surprised if it doesn't show up on the Booker. Not is Booker's English, right? Giller? No. Where do these prizes come from? What's the one that comes up in the States? It's going to be there for sure, whichever one it is. And so I've actually ordered that one. The other one that I've ordered is An African History of Africa by Zainab Bawawi. It's nonfiction, and it is what it says, a history of Africa, that I'm very much looking forward to, because my experience has been that the history of Africa is told more by idiosyncratic leaders or decolonization moments, or sort of in nostalgic colonization fictional novels. And so I really, and you don't get the sense of the whole continent, you just get, flip-flops. So I have a lot of high hopes for this. And the other one that I've been trying to get hold of for 2.5 years now is Matilda, Empress, Queen, Warrior by Kathy Henley, which is also nonfiction. So those are the 3 that I have ordered. And then I am also looking at ordering The Female Quixote by Charlotte Lennox, which is an earlier, it was written before Don Quixote. So I'm just curious. I read Don Quixote like a billion years ago. So I'm just curious to see how what's this one like, and how much did whoever the author was plagiarize. I'm making an assumption. Okay, so those are the ones that have kind of trickled up to the top that I really, really am looking forward to. There's a few others in there that I will try and follow. don't know, have any of you read Confessions of Nat Turner by William Styron? That, I think, is actually a fictional account of Nat Turner, who led a revolution, or rebellion, I'm sorry. What was the name? Anyway, he was a black person, and I do not know if he was enslaved or he was a free man coming back trying to get things rolling, but I just thought that also sounded interesting. And there's a Canadian one, Jan Arden, who's a musical singer, Canadian. Bittlemores is something that she's written, and I'm going to recommend that to one of my book clubs. Anything else is just going to be spontaneous, and yeah, we'll just see. I don't know. How do you guys come up with what you want to read? Do you just, is it more or less what other people are saying they enjoyed, or are you more of a best of listener, and then you go and say, oh, that sounds good? I don't do that. I don't go to people's bests of, because I've been listening to them all year, and if I've liked their review at the time initially, then it's in these pages somewhere. So and I hardly ever, almost never, go to best of lists by the New York Times or the Globe and Mail or anything. I feel that they're quite often skewed to their readership, and so like Globe and Mail in Toronto is definitely has become fairly conservative in its readership. So what would be the sort of neutral one? I don't know what newspaper would be a neutral selection, I guess, right? Because of course the lists are going to be geared to their readership, so it's hard to figure out what, I guess, the library associations, the American Library Association and Canadian Library Association, and sometimes the British Library Association, although I don't think that's their name, and every once in a while the BBC, and every once in a while the American station PBS, Public Broadcasting Station. Those are all sort of neutral-ish locations or sites where you can get a sense of what everybody's reading. It's very much across the board. So that's kind of my going forward plans. I do have a little to-do list every month just to give me structure, and quite often it gets twisted and turned. If I've got something like I've got Jacqueline Moriarty's Kingdom series for March. Well, maybe it won't come in on time from the library, so or maybe these books that I'm ordering from the bookstore, who knows how long they'll take, or what if they stink? So there's the list. The to-do list is just a gasp in the dark. Well, that's it for me, and I will see you next week with, what have I got planned? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll do the Helen Humphreys wrap-up next week. Yeah, something like that. I'll talk to you later. Have a very good week, and I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true. Bye-bye for now.